So you're trying to make it to heaven and avoid hell.
Yes, that's
Okay.
a good way of thinking about it.
What is the purpose of heaven? Do you understand? So here's the deal.
At minimum,
can.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Experience the Truth. Today, we're talking about Jordan Peterson and his fight he had with 20 atheists on Jubilee. What's interesting about this, we will be reacting to this, but they literally, what I have seen is they initially were doing a Christian versus 20 atheists, but because of Jordan Peterson's interesting take on Christianity, or not even willing to really hold to some of the beliefs of the Christian faith.
You're a Christian.
you say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
Don't be a smart.
Either you're a Christian or you're not. Which one is it?
You're really quite something. You are.
Aren't I? But you're really quite nothing. Right? You're not a Christian.
Okay, I'm done with him.
They ended up changing it an hour later to say Jordan Peterson versus 20 atheists. So it's a really weird hour and a half of like this video, because it's so out there and ethereal, because he won't stick to anything. So then you see the atheists kind of have a heyday with him because he doesn't hold to the Christian beliefs, and then therefore they straw man the Christian position, presenting something we don't even necessarily believe. So in this video, we're going to actually be talking about, which you'll see in this video, what the purpose of life is and what is heaven as Scripture defines it. So I showed you the video. If you guys don't know, this is Pastor Zach of our Farmington campus, and I had asked him to come on and give his take on this as well. And so I showed you this before. Yep. Just first thoughts before we dive into this of what we're getting into.
I think it's a great interchange. I think Alex is a little bit more bugged by it than I am. Because, but seriously, Jordan Peterson, he really has some great writing. He's got an amazing mind. And him and these atheists bring up some really great points. Mm-hmm. So I think there's going to be no shortage of topics to jump in and out of. Mm-hmm. But they bring up some of the real stuff, and hopefully we can bring some clarity and some answers to, I feel like, unfinished questions that they brought up that they never really answered.
Exactly. And the reason why I'm bugged is that I hate that. I'm like, no problem with Jordan Peterson. Like, I like him like in his lane, yeah. Right? But I hate that he gets grouped in as a Christian, where clearly in multiple interviews, I mean, when he's on with Alex O'Connor or even in these videos, he will not say Jesus is Lord, or that he like really resurrected. It's like almost metaphorical to him, or Jesus is just reduced to like a moral example. And he is inspired by him, but he doesn't actually believe in him. Mm-hmm. So that's the thing. I'm like, I got no issue with it, but I'm like, don't group him in as a Christian, because you're not presenting our position correctly. But love the guy. He's a smart dude. I need to read some more of his books on his, the Habit book. He has like...
He's got like 12 Principles of Life.
12 Principles of Life.
He's got a We Who Wrestle with God book that I'm currently reading as well.
Yeah. When we pray, you said he's like a C.S. Lewis. Like you could tell he's almost there. And I'm happy for him, but just don't speak on Christianity when you're not a Christian.
I've read a lot of his books and stuff for a while, and I've almost seen this transition where I feel like he is, again, kind of C.S. Lewising himself into a relationship with God. I don't think he's fully there yet.
Yeah.
I don't hear him making the claim, Jesus is Lord.
He's flirting with it.
He's flirting with it. And, but the cool thing is I do think that as he's diving deeper in, I think he's becoming more and more convinced of it. Mm-hmm. At some point, you always reach the ledge where you got to make the dive.
That's good.
There is no such thing where you ever get to just kind of like teeter in and out or put your foot in. It always requires a jump of faith at some point. Mm-hmm. I think he's at that point.
Yeah.
He doesn't need more evidence. The evidence is there, and I think that he can even logically lay out the evidence. Mm-hmm. At some point, you need to really not just know who he was, but truly entrust him as your Savior and call him Lord.
Yeah, there's a difference between, the trust and the belief as far as commitment and trust in who he is, not just reading about what he did. Major difference. So that's what we're going to be discussing. We're going to react to this and hopefully bring some clarity to some of these questions because of his position that he is not fully claiming he's a Christian, that atheist kind of has a heyday. with his idea, with Jordan Peterson's idea of Christianity, and kind of, takes him for a walk here. So we're going to watch this video, and then we're going to present our take.
Because I would say, by definition, God is the unity upon which moral claims are based. That's a definition, right?
Okay, if there is a God, what is the purpose of life?
Well, in the Christian tradition, the purpose of life is to engage in voluntary, upward, self-sacrifice so that the kingdom of heaven can be established on earth.
So you're trying to make it to heaven and avoid hell.
Yes, that's a good way of thinking about it.
What is the purpose of heaven? Do you understand? So here's the deal.
At minimum,
get
it's
into
the
an
opposite
infinite.
of endless suffering. How about that?
And so should we not try to achieve infinite suffering on planet Earth? And if we can achieve infinite suffering on planet Earth without God, avoiding it, if we can do that without God, then does that defeat your claim?
Well,
What do you notice about just first take, gut reaction of what just took place there?
Gut reaction is it's almost like Christianity is being labeled or established as this way of life apart from relationship with God.
That's good.
And that's what stands out to me right away of this idea of getting to heaven but avoiding hell. But what is heaven?
Yep.
And so it's if heaven is just this place free of pain, but that's not what it is.
No.
Okay. Yes, there's not pain, there's not suffering, but it's presence with a person, the person of God. And so you can't, whether it's on earth or whether it's in heaven, you can't remove Christianity from what it truly is at its base, which is relationship with God. So almost, instead of using kind of these, I think heaven and earth get almost used as filler words.
Yeah.
I would rather define it as life with God, life without God, life with God and suffering, life without God and suffering. I think it brings better definition to it.
And I think, when they talk about heaven, they talk about the absence of something, not the presence of someone. So they talk about the absence. So it's just the absence of suffering. It's like, well, that happens to be the case, but you're kind of missing the mark of what heaven is. Like you said, it's about the presence of God that we get to dwell in forever and ever. And I think a big thing about, like I said, with Jordan Peterson's claim that the idea of Christianity is just picking up your cross and suffering, which, that's the case to bring heaven down to earth and everything. And that sometimes requires you to pick up your cross and follow him. Well, it always does, because it's denying yourself that his will would be done. But suffering is not the end goal. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So he makes it about that. But and this is why the atheists had a heyday with him. But at the very beginning, I think this is how we can present our view more correctly. Why the reason that there is suffering and death, I think, is the bigger question. What happened at the beginning? Well, we read that when God created the world, it was good.
Good.
It was good.
It's this refrain that we see throughout Genesis. He's creating days, and it was good. He creates another day, and it was good. Yeah.
Was there suffering?
There was no suffering.
There was no death?
Yep.
There was no death. No, this is the intent of creation. And then it was really so simple. And we enjoyed his presence.
Yep.
We walked with him in the garden. It was simple. But then what changed about all of that?
Which you mentioned death. Death is a really important aspect. So most of the people that I know that are atheists, they hold to an evolutionary worldview.
Yeah.
And, so then you get into discussions about, how did creation begin? And you're talking about life, and you're talking about Big Bang, and you're talking about, evolutionary theories. I have never heard an atheist give a good description or a good reason as to where death came from.
That's good.
Where did it come from? Okay, so we're having this discussion about life, and either way, whether you take a creation worldview or an atheistic worldview, you still get back to the point where there was nothing. Something came out of nothing.
Yeah.
And so either way, it's a faith standpoint.
Yeah.
Whether you hold to the Big Bang, whether you hold to creationism, there's faith. I personally think that it takes less faith to believe in a good God who had intentionally created stuff, then everything came out of nothing.
Literally.
But either way, it does require faith, and we have to not move away from that and pretend like that's scientific. Faith is necessary in both of those worldviews.
Yeah, like I think that's a huge question. Like, where did death come from? And I think that's like what Jordan Peterson almost did, where he just assumed suffering is actually just a result of creation and our existence, which it was not always the case, which I think he should have presented. And the atheists, I think they just assume we don't go way back to the beginning, the starting point, assuming that death like where did that come from? Our Christian answer is that when God created the world, it was good, but what took place, what happened? It was disobedience that subject the world by our decision under a curse that brought sin, death, and corruption to a good world, and our exile out of the presence of God. So the current result that we live in with sin, death, and suffering, we have an answer for. The atheist doesn't. It was literally self-induced. And that's the beauty of the whole Bible, is literally our exile, the reality of sin, death, and suffering. But the whole reality of the Bible is God reaching his hand back into humanity and pulling us back up to his presence. That's ultimately, if we're going to sandwich the book, like from start to finish, it was good. We dwelled with God. We enjoyed his presence, and sin separated us. And the whole Bible is God plucking man out of our mess and bringing us back to restore us into his presence. There's
going to be a word that we're not going to be able to get away throughout this podcast, and that's presence. Because there's going to be some dichotomies. We're going to be talking about, happiness or sadness. We're going to talk about, pain and suffering versus joy. And but at the end of the day, yes, as a Christian here on earth, because we live in a fallen world, you and I don't get away from suffering. No. It is something that is a part of our life. So then we talk about this concept of, suffering through or suffering upward, as I think Jordan Peterson put it, which is really an interesting concept of, yes, suffering is involved, but you still have this pursuit of something better.
Yeah.
But now this brings up the conversation. What does better look like? So when you are in suffering, do you want to suffer with a creator, or do you want to suffer without a creator? Do you want to suffer with a present God, knowing what you're going through and comforting you along the way? Or do you want to suffer without a God?
Yeah, and that's the thing where it's almost like suffering is we suffer, and Jesus actually suffered for the joy that was set before him. The reward that he would gain, which is because he paid for the penalty of sins, we were a result of that payment, that suffering, So Pastor James always says that suffering always pays for something. And it's like as we suffer and we choose, there's actually a scripture in Hebrews 11 where it talks about all these heroes of the faith that embrace the suffering now and then looking ahead to the promise that they had not yet received. So Moses, for example, was in the palace. He was a prince of Egypt, and instead forsakes the comfort of the palace, the kingdom lifestyle, to embrace the identity and the suffering of his people who are slaves. He left the palace to bear the reproach of Christ. And that's what suffering for us looks like, that we bear the reproach of Christ and go meet him, and we pick up our cross for the joy set before us. That suffering is now our present reality, but there's going to be a day where we await the promise that comes ahead. Like, it's not just for suffering in and of itself, but why do we suffer?
Yeah.
So
when I think of legacy, which should be a part of our Christian walk, it's planting seeds that you're never going to see grow.
Yeah.
It's living this life with suffering involved. But again, going back to Hebrews chapter 11, you have all of these greats, these heroes of the faith, but a lot of them never saw the thing that they were promised. They never saw the fruition of it, the fulfillment of it here on earth. But that didn't stop them, because they knew that it was these seeds of faith that they were planting that eventually would, grow into something bigger, but also knowing that they weren't going to be able to see all of that in their lifetime.
Yeah.
And so we need to, as Christians, we need to be legacy builders where we're planting seeds. Human nature is, I want to eat the fruit.
Yeah.
But part of the suffering involved with this legacy building is you're planting seeds, knowing in faith that it's going to grow and it's going to feed other people. And that's difficult because it's like, well, I want to be fed by it.
Yeah, I want to know.
Well, that seed, that fruit wasn't for you. It's actually for someone else.
And what I think is cool about even Abraham, like people, it's like the hall of faith, is Hebrews 11, talking about all these men and women of faith that didn't settle for the temporary, but looked ahead to something better, not for the reward of man or glory that they could get from man, but for the glory of God. And that's why they obtained a better reward. What's one of the coolest things and really plays into, we're going to talk about the purpose of life from a Christian perspective here in a second. But before we move into that, what's so cool, one of the titles that Abraham has, or what he is going to gain, is his inheritance is the world. Like that's his inheritance, that is so cool. And that's so as a Christian,
Didn't Kanye West say he was going to buy the world at some point?
he probably said something. I don't know. Do you follow him on Twitter or something? I must have missed that. I don't doubt that he said that. But that's so sick, because we share in that inheritance as Christians, you and me, and those of you that are listening right now as Christians. That is also our inheritance as people of faith, trusting in the promise giver that one day we will inherit the world too. If we don't settle for the temporary and settle to live for now and gratify the lusts of the flesh, but look ahead to something better, that's our inheritance, bearing the reproach of Christ. So here's the purpose of life, super simply. Now that we kind of got over that point, what would you say the purpose of life is? If someone were to ask you, okay, I know you're a Christian, Zach, like I see the way you live, and I'm an agnostic. I don't really know what to subscribe to. As a Christian, like what's your purpose?
Yeah. The way I would answer it, and again, this is coming from, my, you could call it bias or perspective as a pastor. But I am pursuing Christ. I'm pursuing God. I want a full relationship with Him, and I'm trying to bring other people with me along the way. Yeah. Like I think there was something that was lost in the Garden of Eden. Okay, and I believe that Jesus gave us freedom to go and reclaim that.
That's fire.
But there's a process to get there, and to me, it's like I'm inspired by the adventure of it. Of like I read.
Going to Mordor.
I read in Genesis, and like this picture of like Adam and Eve walking in the cool of the garden, and God walking and talking with them, and this full relationship. And I hear the voice of God regularly, and so I've had glimpses of it, like. But I think there's a fuller picture, because I still live in a fallen world, and I still have, in a sense, a fallen nature that at times I'm still in battling with. And but I'm trying to go back to this place where it's just this full presence of God, and I'm trying to bring other people with me and recognize like don't settle for what this fallen world has to offer. Let's try to reclaim what God originally intended for us, and it's this walk in His presence that's so real and so fulfilling. And I've heard the audible voice of God one time, and I'll never forget it. This was 10, 15 years ago now, and it still feeds me today in such a way that nothing else ever has. I can still hear His voice in my head. And imagine if just one hearing from God one time can feed you for that long. Imagine what it would be like being in a perfect garden, walking and talking with God on a regular basis.
Who knows you more than anybody, like your inmost being, and loves you. Like it's so when people hear this, it's like you're kind of like crazy. And I get that all the time, because I hear the voice of God, and I can already see the comments like, this dude is schizophrenic. You hear that all the time. And that's why that person, they're mocking me, but I feel bad for them, because I'm like, for you to think that it's that much of a stretch or it's that crazy, it breaks my heart actually, because you don't know God. It's so far. And that's also the reason when we talk about our purpose, who is at the center of your purpose? Everything you said was about Him. that a lot of people think, and this atheist had presented, that our purpose is basically to escape suffering and it's just about ourselves. It's about goodness that we can gain. Our reward as Christians is him. Like when you were truly born again and you receive his spirit, like I can't tell you, when I encountered God, there was everything before encountering God was I had conviction. I grew up in the church, but it was everything that he had to offer was almost the buzzkill. Like I wanted to find the loopholes and continue in sin that I saw was fun rather than following him. And I saw him as boring with lightning bolts in the sky waiting for me to mess up, but I didn't want to serve him. Yeah. That was boring, but I wanted heaven.
How much can I sin and still make it into heaven?
That's
you're walking the fence.
That's the heart of those that don't know God. And then when I encountered God, it wasn't a class. It wasn't a seminar. It wasn't a book. It wasn't apologetics. It was like you said, the presence of God that changed everything. Then I'm like, none of this, everything that I saw, I'm getting goosebumps right now. Everything that I once saw as desirable is all faded away. Like it's lost its what do you call it? It's luster. It's like allure. Like it just, because when you taste the real thing, everything becomes secondary. Like I think of when I tell people about encountering the presence of God and you laugh at me because you're like, that's boring, or I'm like, I was once like you. You just have nothing to compare it. So you see your life, but you have nothing to compare it to. So therefore you think that your way is better.
Yeah.
I was at, we were at the Mormon temple and they have like this grass hut outside. It sounds really weird. Like
you just mentioned that like it was just like every other day. You know, we were at the Mormon temple. And
that's my conversations. Bailey always gets on me about that. She's like, bring me a little bit of context because I just jump into the next thing and you're like, where did we just go there? Bailey's my wife. You should know by now. I bring her up a lot. So there's this grass hut outside of the temple and it's supposed to be like a replica of like how it was some patriarch or whatever one of their dudes are. How people used to live back then. And I'm going through it. One, it's super small. I'm like, I don't even think Frodo could fit in here. And I'm looking around. I'm like, man, I'm just thinking to myself, this would stink. Like if I had to live like this, Lord, take me home. This would just be terrible. Like I would not want to live like this. And then I'm thinking, which who knows what they would have thought. You can take this example for any time and place or what was luxury at the time. Would they have thought the same thing that I did? My guess is not to the same extent, at least, because what they have nothing to compare it to. I have my comfort of my bed, my nice Tempur-Pedic, my house, my heating, my cooling, my TV, like all the comforts that I enjoy. To go to that would be like, I know what I'm losing, or I have something to compare it to, and it doesn't even, but that person that does not have my experience, they think this might be the cutting edge. Like I'm so blessed. Like this is amazing, but they have nothing to compare it to. I say that for the atheist or the person that has never tasted and seen that the Lord is good. They're content with what they have because they have nothing to compare it to.
They haven't experienced it.
That's all they know. And so that's what they think, that, you know, it's heaven, but without God. We're trying to get heaven without God. No, my friends. He is our reward. He is our purpose.
There is no heaven without God.
There is no heaven without him. Like it's all about him. And if he created us, life should be about him. It would only make sense that everything now is about him, the creator. So really simply to what we both had said is life's purpose is to, and I think you said too, you bring people along with you. It's to glorify God, reflect his glory, and our joy is found in him. Like to enjoy his presence, which people just, I think the buzzkill idea that we're actually supposed to enjoy him.
Yeah. And there's, I'm going to add this into that. There's a little bit of mystery involved, which I think really adds to this pursuit as well. Like in Romans 1, it talks about everyone's without excuse because of creation around you. Deep down, I believe everyone truly knows, whether they call themselves a Christian or an atheist, deep down they know that they didn't just appear out of nowhere. Like there's these questions that they have, these deeper desires that they don't have answers to. And there's something exciting about all right, who created me and why? And figuring out that, that's a part of this life pursuit, and the deeper you get into a relationship with God, the more you become who you were actually created to be, because you begin to understand it. And so if you have no connection, no relationship with God, it's like you have this childlike mindset where it's just like, whatever's in front of you, that's all that there is.
Yeah.
But the closer you get with God, the more you are like getting into this adventure of like, oh, this is who God created me to be. This is what he created me for. That's exciting.
It's fun. Yeah, that's from what I always tell people. I'm like, if there was a living God, like just don't get argumentative right now. If there is a living God, the creator of the heavens and the earth, the one who set the stars in the sky, the sun, the moon, the earth perfectly on its axis, who created you and all of humanity and the oceans and everything you enjoy when you go on vacation and pick your favorite spot, that's all his authorship. Yeah. That God, you talk about famous people you would like to meet or have dinner with. What if you could with God?
Yeah.
Would that not excite you? I mean, more than Michael Jordan or like the God of the universe. And that's like when I heard the voice of God, it was like immediately, like one, I was weeping, and then two, is this overwhelming sense of like, Lord, like not even worthy. Like why are you even talking to me right now? It was but it was love that like consumed me. I'm like, God, why? It was just like, why anything to do with me? I get this picture of who you are, your glory, and yet you want anything to do with me. Yeah. Like it's an adventure. And it's like, that doesn't grow old.
Yeah. No.
To constantly discover who he is.
One of the first questions I ask an atheist when I'm having a discussion with them is I'm like, okay, let's put aside for a sec whether the Bible is true.
Yeah.
We'll set that to the side. Mm-hmm. Let's put to the side whether God is who he says he is and Jesus was who he's. Let's put aside whether Noah's Ark actually happened or whether it was a fairy tale. We're going to put all that to the side. If it were to all be true, would you want it to be true? Mm-hmm. Would you want it to be true that there's a God who intentionally designed you?
Yeah.
Would you want it to be true that there's a God who loves you, that would sacrifice anything to just draw you closer to him? And then if they say no, then you know that they're living in chosen rebellion.
Yeah.
And that's the heart of it. It's not whether it is true or not. They don't want it to be true.
No.
And so they're going to do whatever they can do to stiff-arm God and reject him. But that's one of the core questions that needs to really be discussed from an atheistic worldview is, if this were to be true, do you want it to be true? Is this good news to you?
Yeah.
And if it's not good news, then you'll end up where you want to be, which is apart from God. And eternal separation. That's what hell is.
Yeah.
So he gives you free will to choose where you want to be.
That's exactly right. Yeah, we one of the things that I think is interesting is that happiness isn't a bad thing. And that's what God wants us to have. The purpose of life is to give him glory, to reflect his glory. But the glory that he receives is when we find our joy in him, when we find our happiness in him. It's always tied to him. And when it's not, that's where you aren't truly satisfied. And that's why the most rich and prosperous people they're the most depressed or anxious, or you almost see like the most prosperous nations are the most discontent and spiritually dead.
Yeah.
But you always hear like when people are traveling or they go to other nations and they're like, they're so happy and they have nothing. It's like, yeah, because this is not the goal. Like having things and accumulating wealth and pleasure was never the intent of what we were created to be. But true satisfaction is because God set eternity in our hearts. It's to find it in him. He's the missing piece. And in him is where we find like true joy and true happiness. So the next thing is he mentions, instead of, we just talked about what the purpose of life is, but if we flip it on its head, what would be the purpose of life without God? Which I have a couple verses and a couple quotes that I'd like to say. So without God, is there any meaning or morality? Two things, because it's not just meaning. I believe there's no morality either. If there is no God and this world is all there is, then life is ultimately meaningless. 1 Corinthians says it like this, 15:32, let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. And get as much, it's a hedonistic approach, and that's what you have to be as an atheist. Accumulate as much memories, pleasure as you can, squeeze the enjoyment of life, before it's gone because
if there's no God, it's just a pursuit of pleasure.
Yep.
I'm just thinking through right now. If I don't believe in God, all life is just about the next fix of pleasure and trying to create a life where I can get enough of those to keep me occupied from
the harsh reality
of yeah. And then at the end, death is just truly death, and I just disappear into the ground and I'm forgotten.
That's horrifying. Like I just stepped into the atheistic worldview and terrifying. That's not the reason why I'm a believer, just because I'm like, wow, and that's what most people say. Well, you can't face reality.
You can't face the truth.
Yeah, that's what most people will say, and that's not the case. Thank God it's not like theirs. It's funny how there's so many evangelists that are there's so many atheists that are evangelists for their religion when it's just so terrible. Like it's not classical atheism where it's like I don't give a rip what you believe. It's no, I need to convince you that God isn't real or there is no God.
Life is meaningless.
It's meaningless.
But then they go on to try to define meaning.
Yeah, which is just so stupid. Like, because if we live in just a material world, then the immaterial truth, it doesn't exist. Yeah. So you can't even come to a conclusion. John Lennox says, which he does have I have to finish his podcast. He just did John Lennox? He just did a podcast with Alex O'Connor that I got to finish. I only got 30 minutes into it. Dude is a sharp dude. He says atheism is ultimately a philosophy of despair, like we just talked about. If there's no creator, then the universe has no purpose, and neither do you.
Yeah. But that's what again the evolutionary standpoint is everything that you do. You are just a makeup of flesh and blood and different stuff running through. Like it's all just you're primal. You're an animal. Free will is not really a thing. It's just what you're designed to do. So every action is just a result of this primal instinct. And, and that's what it is. That's what drives you. That's what runs you.
Yeah. And most people will say, well, because when you ask them where their morality comes from, well, it's the betterment of human life and human flourishing. And it's like, well, why? So it's like Gary Habermas or Frank Turek when he's debating atheists. He always asks why. Well, why? Why is that the goal? Why is that something that's good, human flourishing? And it's like, well, for our survival, but why?
But why?
Why is survival a good thing?
Why is that a good thing?
Yeah. It's like you have to constantly, and they don't understand that. So they think that you can't have, you're saying they don't have morality, but it's like, that's not what we're talking about. We're saying, where do you get that from?
Yeah.
William Lane Craig said, if God does not exist, then objective moral values do not exist. Things are not right or wrong. They're just socially conditioned behaviors. Just so true. If atheism is true, you are nothing more than a cosmic accident, and you have no objective basis for morality, truth, or meaning. The only way we can have a defined purpose or moral standard is if there is a being outside of our existence who has set that standard. Without that, everything is just left up to opinion, and humans ultimately are that authority of who define purpose, who define truth, and so on and so forth. But if there's a God outside of that creation who created it, that moral and that standard and that purpose is set on him because he's outside of our realm of existence. But
yeah, it's the whole, subjective versus objective, idea. And I always go back to the artist, the painting. There's a painting on the wall. You and I, we go and look at the painting and we've got all of our ideas as to what we think it means, and well, it evokes this emotion in me. And well, I think it's this. And we can talk all day. We can discuss all day. But at the end of the day, if we truly want to know what the true meaning of that art piece is, what do we have to do? We have to go find the artist. And then he can tell us what it truly means and the intention behind it. It's no different with life. If we remove God, it's just you and I subjectively debating, well, I think life is about getting as rich as possible. And I think life is about doing this, but it's all subjective.
Yeah.
So everyone can have their own opinion and everyone can all be right at the same time.
Which is where our world is going.
Yeah.
Because that's why Christianity is considered so hateful, because it seems so exclusive, because absolute truth has now become offensive in a world where nothing's true. Yeah. So let everybody, and that's so funny because when you say that, that's literally the people we talk to, where because it's all meaningless, everything is meaningless, like the Ecclesiastes author says.
Yeah.
So why are you ruining people's day or raining on their parade? Let them believe what they want to believe.
Let them do what they want.
But that person who says that and has that view is making a claim that nothing is true.
Yeah.
So they think that they're being inclusive, but how offensive is that to say everything is true because you think that none of it is?
Yeah.
So you try to play the good guy or the people pleaser when in reality you think it's all stupid.
And you can only be subjective for so long. You can be subjective and allow everyone to have their own viewpoints until someone does something that impedes on your free will or, your subjective idea. And all of a sudden, what are you going to do? You're going to point the finger and you're going to say, you wronged me. But the other person can say, says who?
Yeah.
And in my opinion, I was just following my animal instinct. I was just following what
my truth is my truth.
My brain told me to do. I just lived out my truth.
Yeah.
And if my truth affects you, then why should you care? Because according to your perspective, it's all meaningless, right? So
who am I held accountable to?
Yeah.
And that's the big issue. So, and another thing, next claim, if we could eliminate suffering, would we still need God? He said it in a really interesting way, and he didn't really say it the correct way because he said like an infinite amount of, I don't know. You heard it in the video, but this is basically what he was saying. If we could eliminate suffering, would we still need God?
And I would change a word in there. If we could eliminate suffering, would we still want God?
Ooh.
That's how I would change it. I think of, it's a relationship. It's a covenant. So I think of me and my wife, Amy. Okay. So if I'm suffering, okay, I'm going through cancer, let's say, okay, would I want her around? Yes, I would want her around. She would be a huge help as I'm going through this really hard time in life. If I didn't have cancer and I'm very healthy, do I still want her around? Yes. Yeah. I still want her around because I love her and I enjoy spending time with her. And so it's you remove the relationship, and then again, you change some words. Would we still need God? I just go back to, I want God.
Yeah. Yeah, it's simple as that. Like if we could eliminate it, will we still need God? And then on the flip side of that, that's such a good point. Because it all is coming from a place where they don't have a relationship, like we've said. So there's a perspective that's like limited because they don't have nothing to compare it to. They're like, it's all about what I can get, but him actually not being the thing I get or him being the reward. They don't ever see it or position questions like that. The other way, when he says like if we would like need God or whatever, assuming that we could eliminate, he says, even if somehow we figured out how to eliminate suffering on earth, would we still need God? So if humans, basically I'm assuming he's alluding to, that if we were able to eliminate all suffering, as Jordan Peterson says in like heaven, if heaven is your goal because there is no eternal like suffering, if somehow we could figure out to cure that here on earth, theoretically the suffering would be gone, somehow technology advances, would we still need God? The issue with that, our perspective, is that that'll never be removed. Like suffering on earth will never be removed. Why? Because death and suffering are consequences of sin, and as long as sin and death exist, suffering will never truly be eradicated. Because like what we said, it goes back to the beginning.
Yep.
The starting point is why we come to different conclusions because of what we believe happened at first. And we believe that creation has been corrupted, and the world that we see today, I don't care how many pills you're taking, it's not going to extend your life. It's not, all your scientific advancements aren't going to eliminate the issue of suffering. And if we got rid of all disease and death, there still would be suffering because man would wrong man. Because you can't legislate the human heart. The human heart is deceitful and wicked above all things. So until we get rid of those things, we're never going to have a place where there's going to be the elimination of suffering.
How can you have a suffering-free world with no objective standard?
Yeah.
So if there's no thing that the 8 billion people on the earth agree, here's the standard, we're all going to live by it.
Yeah.
If you don't have that, you have a bunch of people living out their own standards. You can't not have suffering.
No. And it's funny how, their theology of a chaotic God or a chaotic creation goes into their their thinking and their arguments, that it's really the root of it and the fruit of what they believe is just chaos. But that's what they believe they come from: accident, chaos, no meaning.
Yep.
And that's the root of
Yeah.
what everything was created by. So here's actually the fun part. I wish we had more time to talk about this. We might talk about this in a future episode, because this is the part I was most excited to get to, and what most people have an misconception of, which is heaven. So the purpose of heaven, and his argument is, hey, if your Christian walk is about just enduring and embracing suffering, and this is the goal, then what would heaven be? Because you don't have to do that anymore. And I think his mistake, the atheist's mistake, is one, we've already discussed, that he doesn't account for our reward is God and dwelling in his presence, and that suffering is a reality because of the corruption of sin that will be renewed in heaven. So that's what we're going to be talking about, and really addressing those misconceptions and how he strawmans the position of Christianity when it's not really our position. And this is where it gets fun, because this is what we anticipate and look forward to, that promise that one day we're going to be able to inherit or receive the world without sin, without death or suffering, when that's all cast aside. Before we do that, I want to read and look at where we're getting this info, because there's a couple quotes I have, and if you guys want to read this, it's by Randy Alcorn. It's called Heaven, and I'm going to read a little bit from his book. But before we get into that, I'm going to give you some context of what he's talking about, which is Revelation 21, which is fire. Which, like we said at the beginning, how it starts in the beginning, dwelling in his presence, and we said that was going to be a theme, presence, and how it ends with him finally reconciled to us, and we are that's fully realized, where we're in the presence of God, dwelling with him forever and ever. Sick. Okay, so let's get into this right here. Revelation 21. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne say, "Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man." That is sick. You need to put right that in your Instagram bio. Yep. We need to see more of those. That is crazy. The dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Remember, it wasn't a reality until we sinned. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore, for the former things have passed away. Behold, I'm making all things new. That already has got me excited, just that in and of itself. What are your thoughts on that?
For me, it goes back to a moment. A personal story. I struggled for several years, many years, of being truly excited for heaven. Conceptually, I had faith. Okay, I get it. God created it, and God's there, so it must be good. If we think of the best things here on earth, you're going to get a list of different pleasures or things that excite people. I love soccer. Sex is enjoyable. Coffee. You're going to get a whole range of stuff. And if God was the creator and originator of all those things, then heaven must be good. But I felt a little bit like a fake, because being a pastor and being okay, I know heaven will be good, and I believe the Bible, but I don't feel it. And it all changed for me. And this is the same with many biblical principles and ideas. Sometimes you just need direct revelation from God himself to be able to reveal something to you. And so I'm in Kings Canyon National Park in California. I'm sitting on the edge of this cliff looking down. There's this huge gorge in front, and looking down just hundreds of feet, just this sheer drop. And I just had this moment with God, and I was like, God, what is heaven going to be like? And he said this. He said, Zach, I want you to think of the place that is most nostalgic to you, and I want you to also think of the place where you get the most excitement and adventure. It's those two things simultaneously all the time. And so like, think of maybe like your favorite
So
coffee
cool.
shop. Like you just feel cozy. You just feel at home. Like you've got your chair that you always go to and you just feel like at ease. But then also for me, like I love exploration. I love getting in the backcountry and like backpacking and pretending like I'm the first one to experience these mountains and these cliffs and these trees for the first time. It's those two things meshed together all the time. And so for me, one of the things that was I had a hard time struggling being excited for heaven, because I was like, I really like excitement and adventure, and I don't necessarily love singing all that much. And so, I'd always thought of just like the cherubs like singing, in heaven all the time. I'm like, that doesn't really excite me.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden when God introduced this aspect of, there's going to be exploration, there's going to be excitement and adventure in heaven. Like it was just this revelation that I received, and instantaneously completely changed my view on heaven.
Yeah, because it's like we're with a God that is eternal and infinite, that we will, for eternity, still trying to understand and trying to grasp.
Yeah.
Like it's not like, oh, yeah, got there. And what? To me, I have like a really short attention span. So I feel like when we do trips, I like to just keep moving and like, going, doing new hikes and stuff. And just like, I'm like, I get to the place, I'm like, okay, it's cool. Let's go on to the next thing. And so I'm like, that's kind of what I've worried about too, or it's almost been like anxious, where it's like, okay, if I get there, I'm like, what if it disappoints? Or like, what if it, like, I don't know if I want to exist forever. Like, that's kind of freaky. I've like had anxiety over that. And it's funny because it all comes down and resting in knowing that, hey, if all of my expectations, like you said, the glory of the Lord and what awaits us is nothing that we have ever experienced or can even anticipate or imagine, or does it compare to any of the present sufferings? So because there's so much time in your life, even things that you're excited for, you wait, and then you get there and you're like, oh, that was awesome. And I'm thankful, but I'm like, oh, it wore off pretty quick. Like heaven just never will.
Yeah.
And it'll just exceed our expectations.
There's some of those things that never get old. Like I love playing soccer, and for many years, it was this striving to try to get better and better and better. Unfortunately, like I can honestly say, I don't think I'm getting better at soccer anymore. If anything, I'm getting slower.
Yeah.
But it doesn't change my like excitement and fulfillment on the field. I still love it. Like every time I get on the field, like there's just this feeling of, again, excitement and adventure and just being in the moment. And, there's going to be so much of that. And like you said, there's endless possibilities.
Yeah.
And I believe there's going to be creation happening too. I think that we are most like God when we're creating.
Yeah.
So whether it's creating a podcast or a sermon or art or music or, I think that that's when we, because we were made in the image of God.
Yeah.
The very first attribute that we see of God is him creating, and we are made in his image. So we are like God when we are creating as well. I think there's going to be tons of creativity and new creations in some way happening.
Yeah. Like
heaven.
I've heard I was talking about this with a buddy one time, like our innovation, our skills, our like desires and what we love, like that's unhindered by sin and death.
Yeah.
Like we get to discover and delve into those things forever and try, like it's a very different thinking of the person that just thinks we're ethereal or floating in heaven or we're just spirits.
Yeah.
Like we have a new body.
Yep.
Like he's restored what was lost. He's redeemed what had been broken. Yep. This is the story of creation, the story that it was good.
Yeah.
And sin broke it, but God has restored what was lost. So I have a couple quotes here. I don't know if I'm going to get into this. We'll see based on our discussion here, because we're already at a good amount of time right here, 47 minutes. Whew. This was really easy to go through. So Randy Alcorn in his book explains, several books state that the New Jerusalem will not descend fully to the earth, but remain suspended above it. However, Revelation 21:2, what we just read, doesn't say this. When John sees the city coming down from heaven, there's no reason to believe it stops midair. The idea that it floats above the earth comes from the false assumption that heaven and earth must remain separate, but Scripture indicates they will be united. Their current separation is a result of sin and the curse. Once that's removed, heaven and earth will be completely compatible. That's pretty fire.
Yeah.
That's a sick statement.
Yep.
Like there's this separation of the beauty in what I saw when I was reading this is that they'll be forever intertwined. And what's cool is that we've already got a foretaste of that with Jesus making his dwelling among us, the Word who became man and made his dwelling among us. That we got to see a picture of that where God has, in our separation, has sent forth his Son, how he's now eternally connected to us, having become man, that he didn't leave us for destruction, that he became like one of us, and then the hopes in the future that we will dwell with him forever and ever, and that'll be fully realized.
Yeah.
Like, that is so cool. Yeah. Like, it's not the Gnostic view where earth is bad, spirit is good. No, it was good in the jump.
Yep.
God is now just redeeming it.
Yeah.
I'll go. You want me to go on to the next one?
Go on to the next one.
Waiting for you to see if you had anything. Earth is an in-between world touched by both hell. Well, here, let me read this. This guy's a poet, so I gotta get my good. Make sure I don't
poet voice on.
I can't mess this up. So Earth is an in-between world touched by both heaven and hell. The best moments of life are glimpses of heaven. The worst are glimpses of hell. For Christians, this life is the closest thing they'll ever come to hell. For unbelievers, it's the closest they'll ever come to heaven.
Oh, wow. Wow, that is poetic. It's both like, inspiring and then depressing too.
Yeah.
Because you're getting both perspectives.
And the problem with this atheist view is that why do we experience that here on earth? Well, because his presence is still made available to us. That the Garden of Eden is still made available, or his rest, his Sabbath rest, it's made available to us through his Son. Mm-hmm. And so every good and perfect gift comes from God. All the good things that atheists enjoy but never give God credit for, they get to enjoy. But hell is the absence of God, which is everything good. So that's the scary thing, that they're currently upheld and living in the mercy of God with the opportunity to cry out that they would be saved, but they don't.
Yeah.
It is. You want to talk about a religion of despair, that's atheism.
Yeah. It's ultimately, kind of like we mentioned earlier in the podcast, it's this rebellion. If you don't want life with God in it. You're trying to figure out your own version of heaven on earth without God. But ultimately, because you don't understand that God is actually the source of everything that is good. And if you remove God, you remove that source of good. Again, heaven without God
isn't heaven.
It's not heaven.
It's the presence that we were talking about. I have to say this part because this part is just so fire. So, and we'll see if I want to keep going with this, and then we'll end this podcast, and then you guys might get the book. I need to actually read this book. Pastor Gerard has been trying to get me to read this for a while, and after reading a few of these, because I was like, Pastor Gerard, you got any quotes?
Yeah.
We're talking about heaven. I need some quotes. And he goes, oh, here you go. And he goes, actually, I have the book here, and I just started opening it a little bit. I'm like, oh my goodness, like I gotta actually do this. Okay, so here's the cool part right here. So Eden, which is the Garden of Eden, the creation that was intended, it was good. It was in the presence of God, right? I'm saying that's not because of you, but because maybe the people that are listening right now might not understand what that is, to give you reference. What was destroyed, Eden was not destroyed. What was destroyed was mankind's ability to live in Eden. There's no indication that Eden was stripped of its physicality and transformed into a spiritual entity. It appears to have remained just as it was, a physical paradise removed to a realm we can't gain access to. Most likely the present heaven, because we know for certain that's where the tree of life now is, which is what we read, where we'll be able to partake of that tree of life in God's presence, where in Revelation, he comes down in Revelations 2, in 2:7, it's different, where we can partake of the tree of life. God is not done with Eden. He preserved it, not as a museum piece, but as a place that mankind will one day occupy again. And to a certain extent may now occupy it in the present heaven, because we're told that the tree of life will be located in the New Jerusalem on both sides of the great river. Oh man, should I keep going? Okay, how about this part? Just this part and we're done. Though the rest of earth fell under human sin, Eden was for some reason treated differently. Perhaps it had come from heaven, God's dwelling place, and was transplanted to earth. We don't know. But what we do know this: God came to Eden to visit with Adam and Eve, Genesis 3:8, which he would no longer do after Adam and Eve were banished from the garden after the fall. So whether or not Eden was created along with the rest of the earth, clearly it was special to God and it remains special to him. The tree of life's presence in the New Jerusalem establishes that elements of Eden, as physical as the original, will again be a part of the human experience. The presence of the tree of life in the present heaven suggests that heaven too has physical properties and is capable of containing physical objects. So it's not this spiritual or allegorical thing and it's not a museum piece, but it's someday we will be restored to that initial creation that was good, where we walked with God.
Yeah.
Man, I told him, I think I'd say this every time. I was like, we're going to do 25, 30 minutes. That's what we're trying to aim for. We're trying to make it shorter for you guys. I don't know. You let us know if you like the length or the duration. If you think it's a good duration, maybe we'll just keep it, because we just fail to meet it every single time because there's so much content I never can get through because I just got such a big mouth. So if you guys enjoyed this, I mean, let us know if you've made it this far that you want to continue at this duration. Also, let us know what you would like for us to discuss next. Are there any other topics that you want to talk about? Hey, we want to answer questions that you're asking. It's a waste of time if we're just, talking about stuff you don't care about. So let us know what you think, or if you have any questions or you want to give your life to Christ, I have that in the description where you can take your next step with God, or you can text BR-BELONG to 651-419-4409, and that'll put you in contact with me, whether it's a testimony, a question, or want to give your life to Christ. I would love to partner with you in that. Make sure you like this video and hit that notification bell and subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of the future videos and content that we post. We love you guys. Thank you, Pastor Zach, for joining me. This was a fun creation. Did I say fun creation? My mind is kind of like all jumbled now because everything we just went through. This was a fun podcast. Fun conversation is what I meant to say. And I hope that you guys gain something from it and it's something for you to chew on. So we love you guys. We'll see you next week.
See you later.